Hey you guys, Simon here with Gaia Green Organics. It's spring 2020 and what that means is there's a little bit of distance and we're doing a video on location in my own garden because we want to support you guys in your efforts to grow better crops this year using Gaia Green Organics, and we're going to give you some tips today on this video to help you get there. So let's get started. At Gaia Green Organics, we know a lot of you are actually starting gardening for the first time this year. So we're going to help you take your space and make it into the oasis that you really want. And what that comes down to is getting the most success out of the application that you choose to use with our products. So some of you might be wondering, why am I going to use organics? Why am I considering this for my garden? A lot of people these days consider it to be about health and choice and the environment. But the fact of the matter is that our entire planet and this forest that I'm standing in right now was built on organics. And that organic nutrient cycling between biology and the soil and the plant is exactly what Gaia Green wants you to focus on. Some nutrients, including chemical nutrients, are really just about feeding the plant. And it's a bit of a cheat. What you really want to do is you want to feed the soil, and then what happens is the soil feeds your plants. It's a longer process, but once you get it right, it's going to last for years and years, and your garden will continue to get better every year. So before we get started with different ways to actually apply the product, we thought it'd be a really good idea to show you some of the key Gaia Green organic products and explain how they could work in your garden. So what we have on the table in the first place here is going to be all-purpose. This is a great product for you to choose if you're really unsure or if you've got a lot of different areas in your garden that you want to use just one product for. All-purpose has over 16 different ingredients, and all of them are meant to interact with the biology in your soil and give you a better result in your garden. It's a really nice, well-balanced formula that'll give you spring, summer, and fall nutrition for your plants, and it's going to be an excellent choice if you don't really know specifically what you're going to target. So the next product for us to talk about today is going to be Power Bloom. Power Bloom is much more focused, as the name would suggest, on flowers. And so what that means is the middle number, or the phosphorus, is going to be much higher on this product than it was in the all-purpose. Now this product is an excellent choice for plants that either you're focused on flowers, or maybe something that you just don't want a lot of foliage. Something like tomatoes, where really what you're looking for is fruit and not just a whole bunch of leaves going for the sky. So Power Bloom has an exceptional array of nutrients, and it's really going to be about a broad spectrum way to give that soil the fertility that it needs to actually get your plant growing in the right direction using organic nutrients. So Power Bloom is an excellent choice for a low nitrogen, high phosphorus opportunity for your garden. So for those of you that are feeling a little bit more adventurous in the garden, we do have our opportunity to use Superfly. Now Superfly is actually a really interesting product. It's a single input ingredient, and it's from black soldier fly larvae. And essentially what you're getting is almost like a worm casting, except it's from insects, and they would call it insect frass. So it's going to have some biology inherent in the material, and it's also got a really nice balanced NPK. And the really cool thing is that black soldier fly larvae are actually used in aquaculture. So you get away from feeding fish to fish and you start feeding them insects. And so I would really recommend this product as something that is good for everything from lawns to vegetable gardens and all around. So one thing that a lot of gardens actually lack is minerals. And this is a really important subject for people to consider, especially if you're vegetable gardening, because a lot of the news you'll read now shows us that there's just not as many minerals in vegetables as there used to be. Gaia has a great product to actually remineralize your soil. Gaia Green Glacial Rock Dust is all about the minerals, and it is from a rock that's basically been ground down by that glacier over time. And so what you get is you get a very fine powder of rock. Now, there's rocks in everyone's garden, but the thing is they actually take a long time to break down into the soil. By adding a powder, you're going to get a much faster acting mineralization within your soil, and that can really help all the plants in your garden. Something that's really important in your garden when you start using organics for fertilizer is biology. Now, all around us, there's going to be biology in our planet, but it's not always where you need it in your soil in your backyard. Something to consider might be the Gaia Green worm castings, which actually provide a substantial amount of biology. So worm castings will help break down your all-purpose or your power bloom or your superfly, even your glacial rock dust. And so adding that biology to your soil is a great way to get the most out of your organic fertilizer. So a great time to use an organic fertilizer is actually during transplant. So I have a new bed here that I've started in my blueberry garden where I'm actually going to transplant a blueberry right now. To do when I'm thinking of a transplant, because you're not putting it into really a container, you're putting it into the soil. And so what I like to do is use about double the application rate that's recommended for the size of container. And then I'm just going to lightly dust it into the hole, and we're just going to mix that up with the soil prior to planting, okay? Another really good suggestion is to make sure you're adding in some water at this point as well, so you don't actually damage the plant roots by the material being too dry. Now this soil that I'm planting into right now, it already was pre-wet, so we're probably good to go right now. The important thing to remember when you're transplanting, regardless of fertilizer you're using, is to make sure that you tease your roots out and really get them open. And what that does is it says to the plant, hey, just so you know, you're going into a new location with some great organic fertilizer, and it's time to get growing. So just put that down, firmly place it in your hole, just backfill around the plant, give that plant a little bit of pressure, and then right now would be a great time to add some water, walk away, and wait for your harvest. So adding material or organic nutrients to an existing container can be a little bit difficult. So what I'm going to do here is just do a little bit under the recommended application rate, and I'm going to show you how to top dress. Top dressing is really straightforward. What we're going to do is we're just going to dust it lightly on the surface. Now the important thing to remember with a top dress is the fact that you've just now put dried organic material on the surface. So what you would want to do for sure is you do want to get some water on this as soon as possible. So something you can do is just scratch it into the ground a little bit. This will help get it into the soil at the top without damaging too much root structure. What I like to do is if you have something that's a little bit more mature and you have an existing perennial container, is to actually drill it. What we want to do is we want to just create a couple of holes in the surface. And this really protects plant roots without getting too much root damage going. So once you've drilled your holes, what you want to do is actually target some of the fertilizer right inside of the hole that you've just created. And then what you want to do is just scrape some soil back over the top to get rid of those holes. And then right after that, get some water in immediately and water down around where you've just put that fertilizer. So a lot of you right now might be starting a new container. And having gone to the garden center, you've got your plants, you've got your soil in a container. Now you got to decide, how do I want to use my fertilizer? So there's two different ways you can do this right now. One, you can use the recommended rate on the side of your bucket and add that by the volume of soil that you have. So for instance, this would be a 3-gallon container. So I've probably got around 11 or 12 liters of soil in here. So if we said 12, I think then you'd be looking at about 3 tablespoons of material. So what I like to do is I'm just going to dust it down where I'm going to put the plant, and then I'll actually turn it into the soil a little bit to work that down into the profile. And then what we're going to do is we're going to open up a nice little hole, and we're just going to get our transplant right in there. Now remember, you should be adding water at this point. Right now I'm doing this for the demo purposes, and I'm not going to do that until after. Essentially, pack it down to make sure the soil is in good contact with the roots. Let the organic fertilizer do the magic, and get ready for a full season of flowers. So a lot of you guys at home are going to have existing garden beds. And because you already have root structures and plants growing, it can be a little bit difficult to add a powdered fertilizer. So in this case, I've got about 2 or 3 tablespoons of material in my trowel here. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to look to put this around this freshly planted hosta. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dust the material on the surface of the soil around the plant, making sure that you're not coming too close to the stem. In this case, I'm not going to be watering it in right away. I'm going to wait for the next rainfall to water this into the ground. But what I do want to do is just give a little motion on my trowel. And what that's doing is it's making sure that you've got all of the material just below that surface layer. So that is how you're going to treat a plant in an existing bed to make sure that you get the most out of your fertilizer and that you don't damage the root structure and you get that plant growing in the right direction this season. Okay, on to the next one.